Welcome back, everyone. So, this is part two of your lecture. I hope you're feeling refreshed after your drinks break. So, we're going to be looking at paraphrasing and summarizing. So, paraphrasing, you are going to be very familiar with paraphrasing by the end of this essay. So, paraphrasing is of similar length to the original, and it's rewriting something using different words without changing the original meaning. So, rewriting something in your own words. So, you have to use your own words to convey something that someone else has intended to mean. So, summarizing is much shorter than the original. It is a restatement of the main point. So, you leave out most of the supporting details and examples, and it gives the reader an overview of the text. So, paraphrasing and summarizing require you to express the original author's ideas in your own words and to be sure not to alter the original meaning. You also need to be sure not to write in a way that is too similar to the original. So, how can you avoid being too similar to the original? Because obviously, you don't want to just cut and paste what someone else has written. You need to be your own person, you need to find your own language. So, you can use synonyms instead of the same word. So, a synonym is just a word that is similar to another word. There are lots of places online that you can find synonyms. Um, but really, I think if you start by thinking of different words that are already in your head, that might be a good place to start because you can start in a way that's less stressful, hopefully, for you. You can also change the word order of sentences. That's a really useful way to go with paraphrasing. And you can use reporting verbs as well. So if you're referring to an author who might be called Jones, you might say Jones argues that, or Jones explains that, or Jones disagrees. These are really good ways of providing an academic tone as well. These are ways of using language that you see a lot in university writing. So here's an approach to paraphrasing or summarizing. So read a section of writing, ask yourself what it was about, was about what it was about and what was the main point. Hide the original, and without looking at the original, write what the main point was using your own words. So if you can try this approach with the Dweck article, I think that would be a really strong way of starting off with this assessment, because so much of what you're about to be asked to do in this essay is about paraphrasing. So if you can actually read a section, hide it, look at the original, have a look at what the main points are, put it into your own language, I think that's a really, really strong start. So for your first essay, what are the requirements? So the instructions are on the Assessment Task 1 info sheet handout, which is on Milo. The reading is also on Milo, and you can find that either under the Assessment Task 1 or Reading Lists sheet. So what is the task? You need to write a short essay describing the main points made in the article. So the essay task requires you to describe the main points made in the reading by Carol Dweck. So what should you be asking yourself as you read? What are the main points made by Dweck? So this is why in the first part of the lecture, I emphasized maybe finding some ways to take notes, because in the actual breakdown of the essay, what you're going to have to do is figure out what the main points are that have been made by Dweck. That's a really important part. So what could you do? Identify the main points and then describe them. So that's a really good way to start. So your guide or steps to take, how could you approach this task? Be clear about what you have to do. So what is the essay question and what are you being asked to do? Read, for example, survey and skim the article by Dweck to get the gist of it. Read it again with purpose. This time, identify the main point she is making and maybe scribble or highlight or underline on the reading. You can then write these points down using your own words. You can then plan your essay. So remember, for each body paragraph, there's one main idea. So I often say in the lectures that I give in Hobart, one paragraph equals one main idea. And that's a really important part of any essay. Then you can start writing your essay. You can write another draft of your essay, and if you have time, you can write another draft and then proofread your work for small errors. That's a really good process to go through. So, when you are into your degree, using that process is always a good place to start. This is just a sample essay plan because you've been asked to provide a sample essay plan, and I know I've had a few questions via email but also face to face about what that essay plan might look like. This is a good place to start. This essay plan is also available on Milo. So if you have some defining points about your introduction, so the name of the author, the article, what 3 points are you going to cover, if you are covering 3 points, and then a little bit about what each idea is going to be within those paragraphs. And give me some detail about those as well. Try and avoid just a couple of words. Try and give me a fuller understanding of what your points are going to be and what your details and examples and explanations might be. So, will you be assessed on? You'll be assessed on how well you do what is asked of you, your essay structure, so your intro and body and conclusion. So far, 1 and 2 are things that you might anticipate. So, how well did you answer the essay question and how well did you write in essay structure is pretty standard at university. Number 3, your writing. So, how well did you write? Let's have a look at your paragraphs. Did you use topic sentences? Um, Grammar, spelling, these sorts of things are quite important. And number 4, how well you paraphrase and summarize information from the article. For this essay, you are not required to use any other sources or to do any referencing. You're not required to present your personal opinion about the topic or to make any personal judgments about the article. Now, on point 2, I did have some people come to me during the break in the lecture in Hobart, and they asked me whether they could practice their referencing. They were students who had already previously had some experience doing some referencing. I said that was fine, but I will not be assessing those students on their referencing. It's just something that they personally want to do. It's not being asked as part of a mark. So, what about academic style? Here are some tips for your essay. So, here's the first one, use of I or you. Um, Now, it says here don't use first or second person. I think that or you should. Generally speaking, in essay writing, you should say something like Dweck explains that or Dweck demonstrates that. Now, I'll make a brief point about the use of the personal pronoun I. Um, Even though the article here says don't use it, I can think of many examples. In fact, Dweck's own article uses the personal pronoun I, and I think she has a very academic tone in what she's trying to put together. Um, I think that opinion is very much divided on this. I do see that there are many people who have been academics and lecturers and tutors for many, many years who never use the personal pronoun I. It's a very traditional way to write. So I think that the phrases Dweck explains that, whatever the author's name is, Jones explains that, is a really common thing that you will see a lot in academic writing. Um, I'm not someone who's going to say that you must never use the personal pronoun I because I think there is room for it in academic writing. But I would like you to be aware of the fact that there is a debate about this, that the safest way to proceed is often to start with Dweck demonstrates or she adds that because everyone's on the same page as you. But for me personally, I wouldn't penalise a student for using the personal pronoun I. Okay. Features of academic language. Now, this is something that everybody agrees on. Use the full form of words, so no contractions. So instead of it's, you have to use it is. Instead of wasn't, you use was not. This is a really firm rule, and it's one that's going to take some practice for you to get used to. The reason we do this is because academic writing is formal writing. And when you have a contraction like wasn't, couldn't, didn't, these are casual examples of language that you would see in the street, in coffee shops, in the pub, and things like that. It's generally not formal language. Okay, so some further examples of academic language. So instead of saying go up, you might say increase. Instead of set up, you might say establish. Instead of cut down, you might say reduce. Instead of get rid of, you might say eliminate. Instead of look into, you might say investigate. Now, after a while, you'll get lots of practice at finding all the right words, and it will take some practice to do that. You won't get there straight away. But once you've done that, you'll have a list in your head of language that you can refer to when you need it. And that's going to be a great position to be in. What I would also hope, particularly for distance students, is that you share some of this language as well. If you have some great examples of words that you're using, share them with other people on discussion boards because I think that is the best way to learn. One of the greatest things about UPP students is the way they collaborate, they work together, they help each other out so much. And I think with language, it's a really good way to start. So, in terms of the presentation of essays, you can look at the instructions on page 15 of the unit outline. You can also look at the cover sheet and template that is on Milo in the Assessment Task 1 info folder. How to submit this essay? On campus and distance students are required to submit all the essays in this unit via Milo. So in the assignments tab on Milo, this is an example of the cover sheet. I will say to you as well, even though I've just been through the cover sheet there's no compulsion to use them. UTAS is actually phasing out cover sheets, so you don't absolutely have to use those for your assessment. But I will say to you that we do need your student ID and we also need your details in terms of your student number somewhere on your piece as well. So, what are your independent learning tasks for the week? So, go over your notes from today, work on your first assessment, go through all of the steps that I outlined previously, starting from reading through the article, writing some notes, maybe summarizing, working on your paraphrasing, and maybe try to put something into a plan for yourself. Just a reminder as well that all the information that you'll need about the assessment is on Milo. And if you miss a class, please catch up by following the instructions for distance students, which you can find on Milo in the weekly folders, which are in content. Reminder about week 3 tutorial pre-reading. So you're required to have the Dweck article and fill in the tube preparation sheet prior to your week 3 tutorial. Please take the following to the week 3 tutorial. So the Dweck article, the tube preparation sheet, and the assessment task 1, and the paragraph that you started in the week 2 lecture. And that's it. I hope you all have a lovely week.